So I want to bring this meeting of the NCLA to order. And first off, let's establish quorum
Here, Gar,
here.
Haley, here, Brady Jeffrey, yes, Larry Lang,
Here.
and Ruth Mark, here.
Thank you for establishing quorum. First two things for items for consideration. Oh, sorry, pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And at this time, we'll take public comments, items that are not on the agenda today. So if you're here for items on the agenda, we'll take your public comments. Yeah. So are there any public comments for items not on the agenda today? Good. With that, we can move then to items for consideration action. First off, approval of the minutes. I second it. Roll please.
Gar,
Here.
Haley, you're saying aye or yes? Artie Jeffrey, yes, Larry Lang,
Yes.
yes.
And thank you. The second item for consideration is approval of the current invoices for payment for MRG.
I move to be approved the invoices. Take one.
Here. And Haley.
Aye.
Artie Jeffrey, yes, Larry Lang,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, so now we're going to go to approval of fund disbursement for phases 2 and 3 of the library renovation project. We have a couple presentations, after which the commissioners will ask clarifying questions and the members of the public will be asked to submit comments, should they have any. Then the commissioners will discuss the item, and if needed, we'll do a motion. So with that, I'd like to get a presentation from Anthony. You have a presentation on the staff report on the efforts.
It was just going to be a verbal presentation and introduction.
Okay,
So, good evening, to the board, I could be here today, as I guess to the city member for the city of Los Altos. With me today is Jason from PPA. We're very excited to be working with them. So on the staff report, we've done robust community engagement outreach through this process that ultimately culminated from city council about a month ago. And city council approved to proceed moving forward to the request for facility for phases 2 and 3 for funding for new library improvements. And PBA is going to go through the process that we've undertaken in this period of time, give you a brief overview of the design option that's being presented for the improvements, and then a breakdown of the requested funding along with where the costs are going for this project. We're happy to answer questions.
Yeah, good afternoon. Happy to be here. Good to see you all. Thank you for taking the time. We're very excited about this opportunity. We just completed an opening mission in phase 1 at the tail end of that. And the opportunity before us is tremendous to move this forward. So I'll walk you through a little bit of the content for tonight. I'll make it very brief. I did a nice job somewhere to see the background. I'll advance this to the next slide if it'll let me. Let's make this work. I know, is everybody able to see? Okay, but maybe like take it on the next screen. Is there a way to make it a touch bigger, Anthony?
Yeah.
That's the screen. There we go. Let's do it. More legible now, thank you. All right, so we've already covered this. Anthony mentioned it again, but we just had a council meeting on the end of August 26th. And are excited to be here before you this evening. We really want to provide a quick update on all the work we've done. There's a lot of work behind it. We'll provide a quick update and forward the questions, of course, as they come. And then, of course, seek funding appropriations for the next phases, which is phase 2 and 3 as Anthony mentioned. So I don't expect you to read this. This is a roadmap of where we have been and where we're going to be going next. And so what you'll see here on this screen is that you'll see a little orange box where we are currently. And that's at the end of phase 1, as mentioned. And that's really this, what we're calling design alternatives analysis phase, very conceptual phase. And from here, we're looking to move into what we call design documentation and ultimately into visual construction to move the project forward. That just gives you an idea of some of the steps. Next, I'd like to talk about design goals. So this slide was built based on the outreach that we conducted with all the stakeholders. So early in the process, we came to the stakeholder group, asked to validate the great work that was already done by the ad hoc or subcommittee library commission. And from that process, also identified some design goals. We came back to the community once we had some options and revalidated these goals and said, are these still the goals and how are these options holding up to these goals? So it's sort of a success criteria for how we were evaluating design options throughout the process. Of course, as you know, this renovation needs to make some big moves to improve the space. But beyond the big interior moves that are going to need to be made, there's also a lot of technical aspects of the work. So this slide is really just speaking to the fact that you have a tremendous asset with that library. Structurally, it's a great building. We've done an assessment of the building, both structurally as well as all of these aspects that you see on the screen. And what we're seeing is that as much as it's important to improve the interior layout and design of the inside, it's equally as important to upgrade all of these components that we all experience as users. Thermal comfort, the visual acuity, the acoustics, all of these things are really important. So that's going to be a big part of these improvements are the things you can't necessarily see that you experience. So that's something I wanted to mention as we go through this as well. Let's jump straight to the next slide. This is your floor plan of the library as it is today. You're all very familiar with it. I did want to take a moment just to orient because, as mentioned, you have an incredible space already. So we always start with what's there, and you have a lot of good with what is there. We don't want to undo any of the good. We want to improve upon what is there. And as you can see from this current floor plan, I want to point out a couple of key things that will help when we review the proposed plan, understand the changes that we're looking to make as part of the next steps. So you are very familiar again with this space. I'm going to take a moment to zoom in to the main entry lobby. A little laggy. Okay, there it goes. So you all know the main entrance, the lobby that you experience currently, and then the extension of that space into the library towards the orchard, towards City Hall. And of course, you have that great secondary entry to the north. Once it catches up here, there it goes. And that's going to become even more important now with patio improvement projects that are being considered just off to the north between here and the orchard. So these two entries really create the spine of your space. And as you know, you have a restroom floor currently, which is, once it catches up, right here next to the orchard room. And we'll talk a bit more about how we're looking to change this floor. This floor is an important component, as functional as it is. It's an important one to make good improvements to and the updates. And as you also know, currently the children's space is on the right now ready to go with some upgrades as well. So we've been coordinating with that team to make sure that any work we're doing for the rest of the space corresponds to the improvements. And lastly, just mentioning that the rest of the space, as you all know, is very open. And inherently, we want openness, but with openness comes some acoustical challenges. You have that much open space and you have activity from the children's area, for example, or from the lobby. How do you help manage that? So it's something we've been looking at as well.
So can we just go right to the Q and A, because this body doesn't have anything to do with
Sure.
design whatsoever.
Sure. Will you go ahead and, would you like to see the proposed plan, or should I just go straight to the item?
I just want to start asking questions. Right? My first question is, within the design, there was a push to electrify the library. I want to know how much of the expense to do these sustainability upgrades. I want to know what portion of the project is that expense, and whether or not the NCLA funds can appropriately be used for sustainability when our legislative charter is to use the tax revenues to preserve and extend library services. That's my fundamental question today.
I think I would defer to the legal opinion for it's a funds on. As far as what the costs are, it can be taken a little. That's the slide. The next slide has the breakdown. Transportation card costs, which estimated at about $5,000. That is obviously without the considerations that we for council for solar and or batteries that we back up, which would be outside of this.
But what portion of that number is, reflects moving to a heat pump from the existing method of heating, things like that? Really do need to tease out how much that portion costs. Then we need a legal opinion as to whether or not we can actually do that. And we need to make a decision as a body as to whether we want to do it. And if we don't, we have to kick it back over to Los Altos Council and say, this is your requirement, you fund it.
And I think for the answer, the short answer is I think in the next phase, when we start normalizing these numbers, because these are numbers based upon our estimates and these, we'll be able to break out the costs into a meaningful way that can return to NCLA to say, here's the cost for electrification, here's the cost differential between sticking gas versus electric. Because that's gonna be an important part of this conversation.
So I'll look at my colleagues and see if there's a uniform,
Yeah, but maybe
consensus on that.
another sort of ancillary question back, which is, does the question of whether or not should undertake these electrical changes to the electrification desired, I think there was some positive sentiment about that last council. Does that question change the amount that's in front of us today? The question, in other words, as a thought experiment, perfectly clear, I'm not saying this, but like, if I said absolutely certain we don't want to do electrification, would the 1.2 number go down? Or conversely, if I said absolutely certain that we want to do it, would that number go up? Because that's the question that we actually have to decide today. And I want to, sensitive as the mayor is to wanting to be squeaky clean about only spending NCLA monies in ways that are appropriate to the law established. So if the answer is whether, spelling out the electrification option has no impact on the 1.2 number, okay, well, then that's a decision to be made, advice to be received, but it doesn't impact the decision for us today. So I guess the question I have is, does that policy question of whether or not to electrify have any impact on the choice? Is that
That's a perfect beat. Well,
summarize?
I think at this point in time, okay, like that. Well, so there's the basic burial, we skip to the last section. So I've got $3.14, $90,000 broken up to go for its electrification and it's solar and battery backup as part of this project. That will then change the 10%. 10% contingency that's being requested as well. funding.
Okay, so the different, I see a number there, 1.740.
But what for?
The 140, sorry, terrible accent. And the number on the agenda is 1.254, which is the difference between those two numbers. The
So the last slide was gonna tee up that this is the number of the costs, and then that includes the 10% contingency. So we included a 10% contingency in that. Word for all projects, we typically have 10% contingency should overrun to rise or the base. So at this point in time, based on my back of that map,
Yeah,
the number is about 924,000, and it's the electrification. So that's pulling those items requested.
So my opinion on this is what we're approving today is a 1.2 for the phase 2 and phase 3. I think in going forward, the designers need to be really mindful as to this issue. Need to be really mindful as to this issue on the electrification. And when it, because when everything's said and done, we're gonna need to figure out how to pay for this in total. And I've got my own issue, I've got my own comments on that, but overall, just be aware. It's important to be aware and know that how the NCLA funds can in fact be spent and for what purposes.
Should we seek a legal opinion on this particular issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should, right? I think, right, I mean, just for the benefit of anybody listening here, right? I want to draw a distinction because I think it's an important distinction, right? Which is, I am personally committed to trying to figure out a way to electrify the library after it's done, right? So these questions, at least for me, at least for me, are not a debate about whether that's a good idea. I think it's a very good idea and very important for us to do. But
So who pays the bill for that?
right, today, I'm not wearing that hat. Today, I'm not wearing any hat, but conceptually, I'm wearing my NCLA hat and wearing that hat. You want to be squeaky clean to make sure that any use of funds out of that pool is deemed to be appropriate by, and I do think it's a potentially ambiguous enough question that it would be wise to seek legal counsel.
It's a very ambiguous question, and it would make it even further more ambiguous because we've talked about making the library a place where people can also go to see an electrification project. And we talked about adding interpretive aspects to the library. This was from our last council meeting, by the way, so you guys probably haven't heard this yet. But our council said, if we're going forward with the electrification, then if we're going to make this sort of a flagship project for sustainability as well, then what can we do to incorporate interpretive materials about sustainability into the library experience? And that makes it more ambiguous because once you create programming around the sustainability of the new library project, that becomes a library service, the programming of the information around sustainability. So underneath that definition, council may say, provided you meet this, and this criteria, we can consider those appropriate expenses under the NCLA framework. Or she may say, no, they're still outside of, protecting and extending library services, and therefore they need to be paid for by the city of Los Altos or by somebody. So it's a tricky legal opinion to ask for, and it's not cut dry, but I think we need to have
The
insight.
thing I'm curious about today, is there a sum of money that, so they also want to hold things up, right? So the question, is there some money that could be authorized unambiguously with the library and stuff?
I also like to, just from staff perspective, bring up that I just confirmed that if we did have solar battery backup with electrified appliances, during the power outage, the library would operate. So that would be an additional ability to provide programs and services during the time or tradition. Where I believe the county can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe policy is power does go out. There's the operation needs to have
Patriots.
Yeah,
I don't think we can answer the question today with the group of people that's here. Whether or not the sustainability portions of the project are covered by NCLA. Let's get a legal opinion, let's delve into it. Get feedback from the county as to whether, you know, there's programming and services that are intimately tied to the electrification and sustainability.
So I have a question there. Why picking on the electrification?
Picking on it because our job is to make sure that parcel tax revenue that is collected specifically to extend and protect library services is spent specifically to extend and protect library services. And we've already gotten legal opinion that says we can remodel with these funds, but that doesn't necessarily mean that elements of the remodel that aren't oriented towards whole library services. Some of them may be considered optional.
Yeah.
You know.
I think, yeah, I mean, it could be if the opinion comes back, no, you need to, you know, as part of this renovation, you need to visit the HVAC hot water plant anyway.
I understand that, and that's fine. So exactly what was said, we have approved a remodel. So 3 months from now, will we be discussing plumbing, for example?
I don't think so, because it's not I guess maybe the way I would put it is that the change from traditional gas, natural gas, which it currently is, to this is a policy decision. And I think there's a reasonable person could ask, is that policy really driven by Los Altos's climate action adaptation plan rather than a need to upgrade library services? I don't know the answer. I'm just saying a reasonable person can ask that question.
Yeah, had we not suspended our enforcement of breach codes, it would have been required, right? But the Berkeley Restaurant Association caused many jurisdictions to suspend elements of their building code, right? And that's the boat that we find ourselves in. We could do this remodel without changing from gas HVAC to electric. That requirement for an electrical heat pump, I think, is a direct reflection of really of residential feedback, residents' feedback into the process, because a previous iteration of the plan didn't have that application.
Right.
Nothing.
I mean, and again, to what I said earlier, I think they certainly received much feedback from the community, but there's general support from the direction. So it's not a question.
It's a question of who pays for
Or
it.
it's a question of that the checkbook that writes that, the right checkbook.
we have had, in the past, we've looked at different buckets. Where those buckets belong, what's acceptable for NCLA funds to be used, and where it's not. This program going phase 2 and phase 3, no matter what we decide to do, it's an acceptable use of funds, what we're doing tonight. What people need to understand, and specifically what I think, AVA need to know, is that certain buckets may not be paid by NCLA funds. They may be electrification, they come from somewhere else, another grant, who knows? We don't know. But it is enough of an issue to think about. Okay.
So saying correctly, when this return get processed. Even though these levels of identification.
And unless the attorney comes back to us before and says it's not necessary to bring it out.
I think that's right. I think step one is to get a explain question. It's, if the answer is, no, it's fine. Of course, it's just the same way you need to upgrade the bathrooms. It counts and it's cool, right?
Yeah, you're upgrading to modern lighting, modern networking technology, modern this, modern that. Maybe that also means.
That's exactly my question. What, why we keep nitpicking on one thing and not the other thing?
Because this was a major add-on project, and it's not an add-on that came out of the needs assessment or any other library oriented
So it is an extra.
effort. It came from residents and other stakeholders who prioritize sustainability.
And it's community. To have,
I'd also like to add. Building code is also be updated. January, and so there's potential some of these items may. Require. Similar to the accessibility one, or we're gonna know more in this next phase about what's required by code, or it's not, but I think we understand the direction properly, so.
Who would make this decision? That like city of Los Altos attorney would review this, does the library have a separate attorney? Okay. And I think that, like I said, the battery backup and everything, being able to run during a power outage would apply, but about the natural gas, I'm not sure. And is there any chance that Los Altos would change their code? I know we're restricted right now about changing, but Los Altos Hills uses a nitrous oxide limit, which has made the REACH codes still acceptable. And so I don't know if that would happen later on, and then we would not be in compliance. You know that better than me. I don't know how the codes may change.
Yeah, we're not, we have no plans to take that up.
Okay.
Certainly not. I've heard.
I think the sense I got from the meeting, the council meeting that I attended, they said everyone wanted to do this, it was the right thing. to do. But everyone struggled with how to exactly engineer it. And there was, what should I say, engineering for the days going on. Yeah, some of the council members may have had ideas that, started and that the aviation AD to or pay attention as to the source and how much thought went into having a see-through wall for a heat pump to see how a heat pump works.
Okay, so how do we make progress?
Oh, I have a question. I did clarifying questions. Anybody else have questions?
Culture should share with the public.
Well, yes, but first commissioners have questions. I have some. Artie, anything?
No, thank you for giving me that context.
And then how soon could we get this to keep things rolling? How soon could we get this opinion?
We'd have to, we have a lawyer. But of course, now I'm blanking out on the law for the thing. We could probably look at that. Probably 2 weeks or so.
I think 16 months or so.
I don't know, it's rushing out and getting an opinion. And the reason is, there's gonna be other stuff. It's not gonna be just one thing.
Exactly.
Right? It's gonna be the whole. And I could send you guys the opinion that it's gotten out so far. There's 3 buckets. You can do things in 3, but not in 4. And that opinion will probably need to be reinforced. We've got it back. But I think we've got a lot to. And if we need to make a motion that I get together with Christie to do this. I don't know, is that how we do it, the motion?
I don't think you need a motion, we can do it on guidance.
Okay, so you want
I
to
mean, it's not an actual decision to do anything, just seeking legal advice. And in fact, that's preferable to taking some kind of an action.
okay, so take note that we are going to be going out for.
But can we be a little more specific on what we are asking legal advice for? What aspects of the remodel we can undertake and pay for? Is that what we're doing? How?
Yeah, I think the general question would be, what is the dividing line between appropriate, inappropriate expenditures in NCLA funds? And the specific area for examination would be this electrification question. But I would hope that the opinion came back with enough clarity that it would be a general guidepost for us, whatever decision.
I'll ask Christie to send out the opinion. That we have it, so we see, do that, Christie. And you at least see what we've got. And see,
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be good, because for the first 18 months of my being on this commission, we just heard lawyers telling us why a remodel was okay, but a new building wasn't okay.
Exactly.
So that's why I'm like, you know, are we doing electrical, are we doing plumbing, are we gonna start
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about kinds of toilets and a year from now?
Especially like with plumbing, you probably wanna reduce your water consumption, so that's another like.
Overflow
thing.
toilets.
Yeah, yeah, it's another thing.
Yeah, although some of those things are code. And if it's code, it's easy, right? Just you have to do it.
That's good, that's good.
Are there any other clarifying questions? I have some. Mr. Carnesecca. In your staff report. What is not listed? What is not itemized? I know that's a hard question, but is there anything that's left off that we don't know about? If you go page 2 in this, in your report, as part of the next phase is the design team.
Design services?
Yeah, does that track the slide and back?
Yes,
Okay,
that's after meeting with ABA, discussing the design services.
are you gonna spell those out? On something greater than this presentation?
Spell those out as.
Well, like it says photovoltaic system design. Is there something that we need to know about, or the public needs to know about, as to what that actually means? I know that sounds a little obtuse, but does there need to be more explanation, or is this stuff generally?
This would be standard terminology in English for design services, yeah, we got, so. I think they're happy to answer any questions that you may have about specific.
But I guess this is gonna go into a contract extension. And is there any room for misinterpretation in any of this?
Staff's
Are they
opinion-
defined terms?
In staff's opinion, these are defined terms, especially on the screen, the deliverables and milestones are very explicit about it. Is actually tangible product that would. Be from the state of the project.
So each one of these is a specific. Thank you.
I think the other thing I'll mention is that we're happy to provide a paragraph description of each of these to help further elaborate on exactly what is involved in these one-liners. I understand that sometimes that will help legibility to understand them. And I think we're staff will look at whatever steps are needed to clarify further.
For me, it's not necessary. I'm okay. For that.
We'll make sure that the contract spells out as clearly as possible what's expected. And I think these terms are what I've heard from our consultants, standard.
And the contract will go through, council,
Return.
so the public will see it before it goes out, all right. Sorry for having questions, is one of those things. You know what they think? Just. Yeah. That's it, true questions.
This is the time to ask questions about the design, so is that.
Clarifying questions.
Okay. So, this was supposed to be available after hours, and I know the drawings are small on the computer, but. When you walk in, is there some. Wall or something to keep people from wandering everywhere? I couldn't tell from the drawing.
So this is not a meeting to review.
It's not,
It's
okay,
not at all.
that was my question, is it, and I know friends of the library had questions.
It would be either at the library commission or when it comes to council or what have you. But their job is just Does it fit within your mandate to make the change?
That's fine. We didn't know what was included.
Good questions, just.
Good, so, with that, members of the public, are there any members of the public? With something to say? Stephanie, 3 minutes? Yeah. 3 minutes? Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, take your time.
So, you. And here really just keep more in the water. They're all beautiful, they're efficient. They're serious. And board at its last meeting, basically came to a consensus that they cannot support the Friends of the Library. And August, that they could not support the ongoing area. It's the park that we sell high quality books to the public. And if you can, library is ready to go in, desk, across the way, against the wall, like that. It's very, very good location. It's the single biggest reason why we sell so much. We are much smaller than Saratoga. For example, we have 264 square feet of floor space somehow occupied one way or another. With people can fill it. We generated last year, just finished, $91,000. 350, 340 or so dollars per square foot. Okay, all profit. It can't be a used book seller and get away with that thing to do because everything's free. We don't pay for the space, we don't pay for people, we use the good people in the library to be cashiers, so they're there and it's open, and it's perfect. They like this. At the level, that's me. Get a stack of sheets, pulled out of the books, and I get the template. This past week, it was looking up about 600 sales, at least 300 people bought things. And it's about $1,500. You know, it's not. The fund the library, I'm sure is decent money. Found the issue really is around that, and they're really kind of trying to be harsh, but they're just losing in this current zone. The people who use the library lobby now are going to be impacted. Out there in this kind of large, smaller, yeah, then terrarium. That's going to impact even wheelchairs getting kind of the head. So it's, I think it has to much more consider what the residents of Los Altos and Los Altos Hills are using their library for. It's open now pretty much in the lobby area. It's not going to be full open anymore. So you pop down this thing. We can live where we are in the space we have. Don't shift to the left because get rid of the patent office, or the passport of it. And we'll do fine. And we'll do fine if you want to get started before normal hours. So we can handle.
Well, thank you, Becky. Anybody else? Alex? Dan?
I'll comment on the question about solar and the batteries. Building belongs to the city of South Coast. They're getting free, so to speak, when I take CLA using it for the purpose that wasn't intended. The free money for the library. I think it's a step too far. Say that putting solar panels in the roof. Some point, the utilization really for the users invited. We think there are other solutions like that that are step too far. It's not that much money. It's sitting just write the check for it. And move on as regards to the issue. With regards to the design, I'll just make a couple of comments. I support what something has to say. I think the design of the lobby. Could be the friend of the library, probably make that lobby. You've never been in the library on a Saturday, or Sunday afternoon, we have game kids. There are nearly hundreds of people that pass through that lobby. And taking and putting that, friend of the library there in the space. However, it's gonna take away from the food services, which the people very much enjoy having. Know you guys aren't responsible for this, but you do have a role.
Yeah, I was just trying to say, if we're going to, we probably should have put it, the NCLA funds that we use to add active. The ability to do active, and that's really, I think that goes beyond, but you have, well, you can stretch it more.
Some of that's code too, though, right? We have to understand what the building code requires on any project of this nature and things that are beyond the scope of what the building code requires that haven't been specified in terms of, you know, the needs assessment or other efforts that have gone into it, again, should be part of it. Those are the things that I think we need to tease out and measure, you know, in terms of cost. The bathrooms, I don't know the answer on the bathrooms.
We're at.
Do you know, in fact, let me rephrase this as a question for Anthony, you know, top of your head, what the code requires for bathrooms and public access? Got me out of my bed. Yeah, I do not know that. We'll follow up and get an answer to that. Because it could well be that that's also an area where beyond what is.
Well, that was a case. of- I was gonna say, that was a case where we needed there was actually a needs assessment. Because there were no bathrooms in the family area.
With the desire, just like the 12,000 square feet, there's a desire and a bigger space and the desire.
I won't, I can't comment. I mean, it's a set, yeah.
I kind of used to look at this, she is actually with that thing, the NCAA free. When we have the market active, she wrote legal things. The fund is full.
She wrote Measure L. She wrote the measure. Literally.
And she did review the last time we went for legal advice, Jolie also. We got also reviewed and I would imagine, I will ask her, I mean, we will ask her as well to, you know, not necessarily opine on. What NCLA funds can and can't cover, because that's not what her job is right now, but we'll ask her from the city of Los Altos standpoint. To give us some legal guidance on. Some of these issues, but it will come from that.
Are there any other public comments? Thank you for the public comments. I have one clarifying question that and actually, I'll start with a discussion of sorts. In the conceptual cost estimate summary slide, the one that shows everything, all the
Gantt
phases, the Gantt chart.
Thank you, Chair. Like me to share.
Yeah, please, if you could, because I have a question specifically on one of the chart things. You go back to the counseling, but you don't really come back to the NCLA.
You're talking about the slide?
Yeah, apologies. It's slide 8, next steps.
Okay.
Whatever the next step slide is.
You got your cursor up, that's each.
That one right there. So up, we're in phase 2 design documents. I had questions. Why don't we go back to the NCLA? Under leadership approval. Well, there's no other checkpoint with the NCLA that I can see on these charts. And the reason I bring this up again is to the segmentation of the. We're gonna have to have some kind of meeting or get together where we go through and we actually look at what each item, where each item should be. And we may need to go solicit more money from other sources.
We would do
Well,
We would
do
as a body,
it separate,
but
yeah.
we still gotta approve the rest of the
that.
expenditure.
We as a
That
community,
we're-
correct, but like,
Yeah,
So this is a modular phasing of the project that shows coming back at 90% drawing to NCLA. If it would be the wish to come back sooner or later.
Yeah, is that too late? Evaluate if that's too late or not. I'll take your word as to where it should go. But it seems late. That was my last comment.
I think based on the conversation we had today, we can make adjustments to make sure it reflects coming back at an appropriate time.
Okay, so commissioners. Discuss the items, the next,
I think, I think it's an open question as to whether or not we approve the that's requested. And along with that, basically make a statement that says, if down the road we review this and find that there are elements in this amount that's been requested that are outside the purview of NCLA dollars, that will be reconciled in subsequent appropriations. I would only be, what I'm saying is that I myself can't approve this as it is unless there's either a reduction in the amount or some recognition that if the legal opinion is that there are elements that aren't NCLA valid expenditures, we have to reconcile those at a later.
yeah, well, I think,
I mean, either that or we table it and don't approve it today.
yeah, I mean, we're not approving monies that they get spent on something in the hopes that it doesn't, right? So we could either reduce the amount or we could attach some language to the fact of like, none of this is to be spent on stuff in question, if felt your opinion, but
That. Best. Go ahead and improve it and the caveat. Based on-
Agree with caveat.
yeah, we put that language on it with the understanding that then if the get some information, like that, about it, free that.
These are million.
we should approve what's been requested by the council. And it's in the NCLA's purview. There's nothing even, it's, they're assessing. However, it needs to be clear, and I think we've made it evidently clear that there's some things that NCLA funds may not pay for. We're gonna need to get legal opinions, but I don't think we should do anything to, trying to reduce it or get it to fall back.
Yeah, no, I'm less worried about that, and it's like, in the long run, there'll be a lot more. Still, so.
We have other intervals where we can.
Right.
But so the question for you, which is, money in the end is fungible. Is this the only money going into the pot to pay for the design, or is there other money there as well?
At this point in time, this is the cost for design. So design, there's all this money we get for completion. Design documents at 36.
Right. So let me float a possible motion and get your reaction from the colleagues, right? Which is what I'm thinking about proposing. Would be a motion to the effect of approving the sum. With the limitation that no expenditure should be undertaken about the electrification of battery or solar. Pending further legal. It's, well, anybody, I think that speaks for itself. Say that, so, see. Looking for friendly amendments, advice from staff?
Could staff provide advice? on
I
this?
would be delighted to
It
receive
would
that.
be great if there was also a caveat pending building code requirements as well, because we don't know what's going to be a building code requirement at this point in time of those items. I'm not a building code professional. I know that the code drafts are coming out shortly and should be back before councils for.
Right, well, I will say, my feedback about that would be. We have to comply with building.
Yeah.
Right, so there's nothing much to repeat about that, right? That's not a policy question. If we're gonna do changes, we have to comply with building code. The policy question now is one of the goal of electrifying building. Or adding photovoltaic storage, those are policy questions. And my way of thinking, it is currently ambiguous as to whether or not those policy goals are appropriate. Targets for NCLA. Like that's the why I'm posing, bringing the motion.
So procedurally, how would that work? If the attorney says this, then they're automatically go, if it comes back and says, no, we need. to
I don't think it's automatic, I think what would have to happen is. I think in the end. This body, not the attorney, makes the policy,
I think that should be clear in the motion too,
so that,
what we do.
so maybe to try to turn that to a friendly amendment, if I might, it should be, to add that caveat. Should then be explicit that this will require revisiting the question after we receive the legal stuff. By this body.
I have a friend who needs to simplify everything.
Okay.
I move that we approve the requested amount. That we approve the CLA attorney.
And we review from.
But the question is, does that prevent them from starting work?
Yeah, it does.
So then that's a different motion.
Here's my view on this is that we approve what's on the table. It doesn't mean that we're gonna fund what they come up with. In fact, that's the big issue.
Even doing.
It's the design.
Design work, but design work would be well within the purview of the MCLA charter. Of what we're doing, of our purpose here, but
Not if they start designing over the source.
Yeah, they designed a Ferris wheel to go with the parking. It doesn't exist.
you're gonna need some kind of electrical system to, so,
But
I mean, it's gotta, you know.
the point is that that's part of the renovation, right? There's a policy goal to renovate the interior of the library. And things like lighting, wall, or that is part of that policy goal, right? That's. Even if you care a whit about the environment, that could still have a policy goal. There's another policy goal, which is to shift the footprint towards more electrified, less carbon intense. Also, a worthy goal, unclear as whether NCLA funds can meet that person. Unclear again.
So I have a question there. So you're basically saying we have a list, the design and engineering fees, and we are going to say that we will only approve we'll approve all of them minus A, B, and C.
But I'm not talking about approving amounts, because I'm not really concerned about that. In the end, all this money is gonna go on. this thing,
Right.
What I'm saying is approving expenditures for the money. Right? What I'm saying is that we release this, what I'm proposing.
Yeah.
Right, is that we release this sum of money with a caveat that none of it should be spent on the questions of solar, electrification, or battery storage. Really all right now, for that, and the reason I propose to do it that way is that then that releases the roughly $1 million and allows them to begin work, which I think is important. Definitely want to get going. Right? While not getting out the thin ice, potentially thin ice, of having expenditures made for something that we still need advice as to whether those are appropriate expenditures. That's the reason I asked the question about, is there other money? Because if there's other money in there from the city or wherever else, it's, that's coming from that, right? But this is the only sum of money. And I want to, my goal in making this amendment, I want to release the money so that you get going. While not authorizing the expenditure on stuff that we still need.
That's what I'm saying. So those three items we will separate, whatever the was going to be. And then once we get the approval, then those can also be included in the fees.
Yeah, I think
It's
that
basically
what I
like-
anticipate,
Yeah.
one of two outcomes.
Yeah.
Maybe for the two that I imagine, one, the lawyers come back and say, that's fine, makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
In which case we could get together
Right,
and see, but we could say, okay, now those expenditures are authorized to get that money.
right.
Or they might come back and say, definitely not, that's not appropriate, in which case. we get Back together, right, but. Then it'd be a task for the city or whatever else to come up with other funds that could pay that.
And then what happens to the funds that are extraneous? They come back to us?
You know, my feeling about it is that there's a lot of work to be done here.
No, I agree, but I'm just saying, I don't know how the mechanics of this works. You know, we come back and they say, okay, so 900,000 is approved because it's everything minus ABC. And then the other,
You know, to me, that we keep thinking of the expenditure rather than.
I understand, I completely understand why,
I guess I'm not terribly worried about clawback, because I think.
Okay.
there's
I don't know
a
the
lot of
mechanics of
process
that.
that's checking that over the coming years, and I'm not so worried about clawback. I'm just interested in making sure that when we put money in the checking account, we're only authorizing expenditure on stuff that is clear and.
Can I ask the designer, can you continue with the design? Without this question answered and just add on that later?
So the short answer is to an extent. So
That's
let me
me.
clarify. It's a timing question. So we can advance this early design to a certain state before it becomes rework. And we've advanced it beyond, now we have to go back and redesign the system. So what I would say, if I may,
Yeah, please.
depending on the timeline of attorney review. If you anticipate that, let's say that would take a month, picking that number up. That if we were to, from tonight, go forward with a number that was established, whether it's number on the screen or a different number. And be able to then go back to council with a contract. That would have detail to it and outline everything. Start the work. And advance the early design work with our electrical engineering company, consultant, mechanical, everybody else, we could do that. Without having to have an answer, up until about, what I call 20% design.
Okay.
Yeah, so. And we're not talking about big numbers, by the way, so we'll look at design costs, we have to design electric system regardless of here's point. And so what we're talking about is in the order of $45,000 to $65,000 in design fee. We're not talking about $1 million.
Yeah.
Dollars.
And I think there's only two likely outcomes.
Yeah.
Only two likely outcomes to that. You end up with a legal opinion that says NCLA can pay for this design in its entirety, or we end up with a legal opinion that says the city of Los Angeles has to take it and pay for some of it.
exactly.
Either one of those is gonna result in the same design being built. This is a question of who writes the check, is the city of Los Altos will not change its mind about building electric. We'll just have to find the money in our budget to support that if that's not an appropriate NCLA expenditure.
And the comment was made is the attorney came back and says, it's okay, we need to meet, but I don't, if that's the case, I don't think we need to meet, we'll just approve it as is, and then he says that it's all okay, just let him go, right? We don't have to meet again, it's only if he says,
But yeah, I. Defer to staff and legal counsel about when we need to meet. I'm certainly willing to get together again whenever we do something. Crucial stuff, right? But
Do we feel like there is jeopardy if we approve this request, Frank? What is the jeopardy? What is the harm that could be foreseen if we approve this request as it is without? Because I don't think any of the caveats that we're talking about are even manageable from a government standpoint in terms of how you move.
write a contract.
yeah, it is just a difficult thing where the. If I were a homeowner, it would be an issue at all. Exactly. I'm like, I never know, yeah, you guys do that, right? But The part that gets awkward is that if we authorize expenditures on stuff that turns out to be out of bounds, right? Cannot assume that the city council would come up with those funds, right? And so it almost feels like we fronting funds that we can't be guaranteed would be returned. Either case, if you see what I'm saying, is we don't. Council's not taking action.
Well, it sounds like there's a material part of the design. At this phase. Give or take 10% of what we're talking about allocating. That is in question. And, you know. I say we schedule another NCLA meeting for a month from now, and between now and then, we go to legal and we go to city staff and assess building codes and those requirements and come back with a finding that we can get behind that says,
My question, staff would be, does that push the opening day of the library renovation back up?
At this point in time, staff is ready to take this forward for next meeting. Obviously, we adjust depending direction tonight. And say that I'm not sure city staff could answer the question of
Right, let
building code.
me be really specific about it. If we do not approve this tonight, is that sort of pens down and we start having a day for day slip on the break?
It'll delay, naturally, anytime we delay a thought or delay steps, we would have to push out, we could council next for the contract. Then begin the next phase is with, so we delay, but. That's a good start.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and make my motion again on that for ten.
But before you do that, let me speak. I think that everything we're spending today, we're allocating today, is completely right. Whether the NCLA pays for electrification or not, the stuff still needs to be figured out. I don't see a risk in approving this. We're releasing the money to the city council, who has to do a contract, right? And at that point, you can dictate through your staff what you want out of that. But all the NCLA is doing really tonight is releasing those funds.
Okay, so rather than be too specific, another way to do the motion would be that we release the funds with the understanding that they will only be spent on things appropriate for use of funds from MCLA.
that understanding is part of our charter.
Okay.
So we don't even need to say that.
But the whole, you see, I think you're wrong there. So no, hold on. I think your viewpoint, Larry, on this is wrong. I think from the sense that we could be asking them to design or to propose something.
If you would have let me finish.
No, go ahead.
I think it's wrong or right, it's moot, doesn't matter. Okay? The salient point is that NCLA funds can be used for the design services. We already know that. We already have legal findings that support that. The design would incorporate some form of HVAC and some form of electrical system, no matter what. So the fact that the design that we're getting includes electrification, it in itself isn't an incremental cost over designing without electrification. The incremental cost will come when you add the material efforts to include and material itself to include those elements of the design, not the actual creation of the design to this point. If we find that the creation of the design to this point, irrespective of the sustainability elements, is within NCLA purview, then we can approve it as it is and wait for the legal findings as to whether or not those sustainability elements of the design can be paid for in the manufacturing, in the building phase. Does that make sense? Because you can't take the 1.14 or the 1.12 or the 1.2, whatever the number is, and say, okay, if instead of putting a heat pump in the design here, does your design itself, does the cost of having you do the design go down because you're not including a heat pump.
I think the heat pump, I believe, Wes convinced that there's no incremental design cost to photovoltaic system in the battery.
That's correct. There is side costs. Totally makes it better.
Right, my guess is that the difference between natural gas and electric HVAC and water heating is probably negligible design cost punch. Right, where it's adding the design for photovoltaic batteries. I paid for one of those, and that's something that I've done.
And that's why I asked the question, how far could you go before you have that, make that decision, add that design part up?
It's not how far can you go on the design? It's how can you make sure that the right buckets of money happen in the everything. And I think that we have to remember there is a large ecosystem of library books. Wally, Press Library, City, other places where money might be available. That might get allocated to things at the MCLA. I mean, I'm not saying I'm banking on it, but certainly something that.
Have to figure out, we don't know, I mean, we all have an interest in expeditiously as possible, getting clarity on this issue, trying to figure out how to not stall what we get. Okay. Let me try motion one more time, right, which is I move to release the money amount specified in the agenda. With the caveat that no design work begins on the solar or battery portion. Or that it would be. Anybody likes it?
Is that workable?
Asking,
I'm asking Anthony if that's a workable.
I think we could work with that, based on the design, we at the end move forward in short term. The other elements of the design. We will have second this.
May I ask one question? Great. It's what happens if we decide to electrify, but against CLA isn't gonna pay for it?
Then, we'll have to, then,
Then we don't design it?
no, I mean,
Somebody else pays for the,
right, the point is that.
somebody else
at
pays
this-
for that.
Right, or it doesn't pay for it and it doesn't happen, but the point is that in terms of the design work, right now, there's so much TBD in the design. The distinction between an electric HVAC and a natural gas HVAC is far enough ranges, right? That, especially since we propose to resolve this within the next 4 weeks or so. right? My point is, you know. But a lot of engineering projects in my life, right, get going, right, because everybody's anxious for it to be done at the end, and they forget the fuzzy front end, let's go, right, that is the point.
There's a second. Existing.
Thanks for rolling.
Yeah.
Mayor Delly.
Against, President Bedard,
Aye.
Daily. Director Joey,
Yes,
Vice President May,
Yes.
and Director Swanson. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right,
Democracy in action.
wow. The mayor, my turn. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the discussion, everybody. Thank you for the public comment. The next items on the agenda. I'll separate that. Quick, so informational items, financial update, the general ledger, the statement. Budget versus actual. Chrissy, if you want to, are there any highlights we should be aware of? Because
routine, we've received the first interest payment, which, if you recall, is kind of front loaded towards the beginning of the year because of the expenditures that we're making. Everything else is well within budget.
questions? Well, thank you, Christie. Next on the item is our report, and I'll probably get this wrong, but I've got. We need to bring in order. From Santa Clara County. No update? No. Wait.
Next Monday, open access and open needs Monday. Have 3 days. And our children are kids trying to close for this. For the preparation phase of it, and so, but we do have children's collection available right up. And programs. Even for programs here, we center.
And how will you expect that to last?
We don't know for sure, we don't have a date, our initial timeline was for the grant. But everything's gonna change.
That's good.
Can I ask, are libraries quiet or loud?
It's not big trouble.
Are they supposed to be quiet or loud?
Yes.
Yes. I know in the city council, there was a big discussion about quiet. Libraries being quiet, and to me, it's fine. Me, I like it. I don't know why I'm asking this. All right, thank you. No, I need to hear what you're at.
I was. But I will say that. You know, libraries are about the. We are constantly evolving spaces, other services, things for your support in that. So it isn't a place that's just for books. Only, it really is a way of activating zones to be. We are, again, very appreciative of the city, and I just want to give a big shout out to your architecture team and city. There's really partnership that you do this work. It is a really exciting time to be here and this ITC objects really together to really configure this whole civic center and let the library do its job. It's very
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, I think. It's commissioner reports and comments. Who would like to go first? Artie, any commissioner reports, comments? Okay. I have to report. I'm sad. We were dealing with, who was it? The guys who give out the, property tax. NBS, and, on my request, I didn't really hold another meeting about it, but on my request, we contacted the people who had claimed the exemption a year prior, and made sure that we reached everybody telephonically, so they could claim it again if they need to. Honestly, there weren't very many. I've 9 people. So something that I just want everybody to be clear. It's very appropriate. Instead of having a meeting or doing a big email trail, it seemed like the way things were. That's it, I think.
January, we're expecting.
Yeah, next meeting day, we're shooting for January.
Yeah. We will be back on it. Let's schedule for January. If we need to schedule a special meeting, we can. Let's schedule for January. If there's a need for a special meeting resulting out of this league.
Here.
Hmm?
Agenda items for the January.
I'm sorry. Oh, agenda items for January meeting. A review of where we're at with ABA for sure. This general progress. There may be some things we need to do in January that are regulatory?
Office of election.
January, right?
The reorganization. Oh, right.
Possible we'll have the auditors report back by then as well for this year.
So the making, the makeup of this body may be entirely different. For this council appoints. Then within that group of appointees will be working as.
I'll be here. I'll be here.
Wow. January 12th,
January 12th, okay.
started the bidding.
Right.
So then that's a bad deal.
Is it? No, it's gotta be February. Martin Luther King is February, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've just created a lot of times, so typically establish to maybe Thursday.
I didn't hear you say.
thank you. Maybe the 25th,
Thursday? That's,
it's not us.
we don't meet Thursday.
No,
Got it.
Thank you.
26th, is that a date that tentatively might work?
and we'll call the meeting.
Yeah, that's a good date to schedule. Because we have our organization, but. The contributing body is an opportunity to make their.
So you said January 26th?
That's all salary.
Okay.
Probably asking to get back in.
Yeah, she may have just had a. Your brain fart. Oh, I'm not in that meeting. Yeah. So I can't go.
All right. Good, so I think that's it. Adjournment.
Very deep.
Yes.
Hanging up, talk with me on a different subject.
Thank you.
I'm always.